I never thought a normal evening could change my life, but that night taught me something I will never forget. It started like any other day. I finished work late, my phone battery was low, and my mind was full of small worries that didn't really matter. I remember standing outside the office building, looking up at the dark sky and feeling tired but calm. The city lights were bright. People were rushing home, and cars filled the streets with noise. I checked the time and realized I had to hurry if I wanted to catch the last train. I walked quickly to the station, feeling the cold air on my face. The sound of footsteps, voices, and trains echoed around me. When I reached the platform, I saw the sign that said the next train was the last one for the night. I felt relieved. I thought, good, I'll be home soon. I stood there, holding my bag, watching the train arrive slowly. People got off, others got on, and I stepped inside just as the doors closed. The train was quieter than usual. Most people looked tired, staring at their phones or out the window. I found a seat near the door and sat down. As the train started moving, I leaned back and closed my eyes for a moment. I didn't realize how exhausted I was until that second. My body felt heavy and my thoughts became slow. I told myself I would stay awake, but sleep came faster than I expected. When I opened my eyes, everything felt strange. The train was stopped and the lights were dim. I looked around and noticed something shocking. The train was empty. No people, no noise, no movement. My heart started beating faster. I quickly stood up and walked to the door, but it didn't open. I looked outside and saw a platform I had never seen before. There was no sign, no sound, just silence. I felt confused and scared. I checked my phone, but the battery was dead. I tried to stay calm and told myself there must be an explanation. Maybe I missed my stop. Maybe this was a maintenance station. I pressed the emergency button, but nothing happened. That's when I realized I was completely alone. After a few minutes, the train doors opened by themselves. I stepped onto the platform carefully. The air felt colder than before, and the lights above flickered softly. I looked around, but there were no workers, no security, no passengers, just empty space and silence. My footsteps echoed loudly, making me feel even more uneasy. I walked toward the exit, hoping to find someone who could help me. As I moved forward, I noticed the station looked old, like it hadn't been used in years. The walls were cracked and some signs were faded and unreadable. I felt like I had stepped into another time. My fear grew, but I forced myself to keep walking. When I finally reached the exit, I pushed the door open and stepped outside. What I saw made me stop completely. The city I knew was gone. The streets were empty, the buildings looked unfamiliar, and the sky had a strange color. It wasn't completely dark, but it wasn't light either. Everything felt quiet, too quiet. I stood there, trying to understand what was happening. My mind raced with questions. Where was I? How did I get here? Why did this place feel so wrong? I took a deep breath and decided I had no choice but to move forward. Standing still wouldn't help me. I started walking down the street, listening to the sound of my own breathing. After a few minutes, I noticed a small light ahead. It came from a cafe that looked warm and welcoming, completely different from everything else around it. The windows were bright, and I could see someone inside. I felt a small sense of hope and walked toward it. When I entered, a bell rang softly. The warmth hit me immediately, and I felt safer than before. Behind the counter stood a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She looked at me like she had been expecting me. "You look lost," she said calmly. I nodded, not trusting my voice at first. Then I told her everything: the train, the empty station, the strange city. She listened carefully without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly, as if she understood. "You're not the first person to arrive here like this. This place exists between moments. People come here when they are lost, not just in the city, but in life." Her words confused me, but they also felt true. I realized that lately I had been feeling lost in my own life, unsure about my future, my choices, and my direction. I asked her how I could go home. She poured me a cup of tea and placed it in front of me. First, she said, you need to understand why you're here. I sat down and held the warm cup in my hands. As I drank the tea, memories filled my mind. Moments I had ignored, decisions I had avoided, dreams I had pushed away. I thought about how I had been living on autopilot, afraid to take risks, afraid to change. The woman watched me quietly. She said, "This place shows you what you're running from. Once you face it, you can leave." I stayed in the cafe for a long time. I don't know how long exactly. Time felt different there. When I finally stood up, I felt lighter, like something heavy had been lifted from my chest. I thanked the woman and asked what I should do next. She smiled and pointed toward the door. "The train will come when you're ready." I stepped outside again, and this time the street looked a little brighter. I walked back to the station, feeling calmer than before. When I reached the platform, I saw a train waiting. The doors were open and the lights were warm. I stepped inside and sat down. The doors closed and the train started moving. This time, I stayed awake. I watched the lights pass by, thinking about everything that had happened. Slowly, the familiar sounds of the city returned. When the train stopped, I recognized my station immediately. People were around me again, talking, walking, living their normal lives. I stepped off the train and felt a deep sense of relief. The night air felt familiar and comforting. As I walked home, I realized something important. Getting lost that night wasn't an accident. It was a reminder to pay attention to my life, my choices, and my dreams. Since that night, I've tried to live more consciously, to take chances, and to stop being afraid of change. Sometimes when I take the train late at night, I think about that cafe and the woman with kind eyes. I don't know if that place still exists or if I will ever see it again, but I know one thing for sure. That night, I didn't just find my way home, I found myself.